Hey everyone, how's it going? It's Josh here. Today I'm going to give you my perspective as a real estate agent on negotiations in real estate, particularly as a buyer. So if you're looking for purchasing real estate and you want some insight, stay tuned. Make sure to like and subscribe, leave a comment. Let's go ahead and get started. So real estate negotiation, like anything else, whether or not you're looking to buy a car or negotiate for a job, understanding and doing your work beforehand, before you even enter that negotiation room, is very important. So understanding your important needs as a buyer and what's important to the seller is very critical. A couple other things to factor in before you start that process is, one, where do you stand as far as your negotiation power? What do you qualify for? What kind of a down payment do you have? And also, what is your willingness to walk away if the terms and price don't match up with what you're looking to do? Keep that in mind before you're entering in the negotiation. I think that's a very important factor to consider, willingness to walk away. So let's go ahead and get started into it. We're going to be talking about what kind of information is important for you to know when you're drafting up your side of the offer and make it most attractive to the seller, and make sure, like I said, you get your terms and price. So there are four things I think are really important to understand as a buyer. The first one is the assets that you have and the loan that you are presenting. More specifically, when you are presenting your pre-qualification letter to the seller, make sure that you don't have your pre-qualification letter state more than you're actually offering. So if you're pre-qualified up to 600, but you're only wanting to offer 585, make sure that pre-qualification letter says 585. Same thing if you're a cash buyer, get that proof of funds letter to state just the same amount of the price that you're offering. No need to communicate extra information that is not needed to the seller. Okay, secondly, you need to understand, is it a distress sale? What is the situation? What's the reason for the seller selling? So is it a divorce? Is it that has the owner passed and the kids are selling it? Is it a bankruptcy? All those things are going to be factors. Generally, as a buyer, those are going to be in your favor. So if you can find out that information, that would be a good thing to know. Third thing, you need to understand how many days on market the property has been. If it's been on the market for a while, then that's going to be better for you. If it's just hit the market, it's pretty fresh, understand that you're probably going to have a stronger offer. So days on market, also the number of buyers, whether or not it's received an offer and it's fallen out of escrow, and why that is. Those are all important things to consider when you are submitting an offer. And then lastly, understanding what the market is as a whole. So in your area, is it a seller's market or is it a buyer's market? When you factor all of these things in, you're now ready to present your offer. So let's go ahead and get into that and how to negotiate in the real estate purchase. So there are four things that you can negotiate over. The most important thing that I'd say is when you're initially offering on the house, understanding, are there other offers, or is it just you that you're negotiating with? That's the most important piece of information. Let's go ahead and go with that. The second one, whether or not it's just you interacting with the seller. You're going with price, you're going with terms, you're going with credits back, and you're going with repairs. So let's go ahead and get into those four things and how you're going to negotiate those. So first thing, price. If there are no other offers on the table, generally you're going to be able to offer around 5% under the list price, or at least present it that way and see how they respond if it's been on the market within that 30 days. When it's 45 days, 60 days, 70 days, depending on the financial situation of the seller, maybe they just have to sell it for that list price of what they're asking. But if you start getting past that 30 days, you can start offering maybe 6%, 7% under the market list price, and just see how they respond. But that's a good rule of thumb, about that 5% within that first 30 days. Now, oftentimes, Your offer is going to be not only decided upon by the price that you're offering, but also the terms. So understanding what the seller's wants and needs are is really critical in this point. So if, let's say, the seller is looking to move to a replacement property and they need that sale to purchase that replacement property, that's obviously going to put you in a stronger position as a buyer. But one thing that you can do for a concession is give them a few extra days, maybe 3 days of possession after the close of escrow, so that they can get all of their stuff moved out. That's going to give them that peace of mind for that. If it's a vacant property and they've already found their other replacement property, then that doesn't matter. But those terms are really important. So factor that in. That can be a longer escrow, and this is important to do before you actually get into escrow, in your initial offer. Factor in those terms, the days on the market, also what kind of items you'd like to be left there. Express that out. Because you don't want to negotiate those items once you're in escrow. So if there's a refrigerator or if there's a stove that you want, make sure that you initially put that in your offer and negotiate that. And then as far as the other terms, getting a clear idea, that's mostly the escrow time frame, when you're going to deposit your earnest money deposit, things like that. So credits. As a buyer, you're going to have certain sale credits that are going to be costing you. That's going to be like the taxes, that's going to be escrow fees, that's going to be the loan origination fees. There's going to be a lot of miscellaneous fees that you're going to be needing to pay as the buyer. Generally, I suggest asking for credits when the interest rate is really low.
Now, this is partially due to the fact that cash is worth more now than it will be in 15 or 30 years, partially due to inflation, and you can use that extra money for repairs on your home to increase the value right away.
Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about repairs. This is an important one. Whether or not you ask for the item to be repaired or you ask for credits back. So say, for example, you have some kind of an issue with the roof that needs to be repaired, and the bid on it is $5,000, right? And let's say you know a roofer that's going to give you a discount, and you're very certain that there's not any extra causes or leaks or problems, and that you can get it done for $2,500 using your friend as a contractor. It might be a good idea then for you to ask for those credits so that you can pay your friend and you can work on it together and get those repairs done. Now, something else to consider is if you ask for the repair to be done and it ends up being, instead of $5,000, $10,000, the seller is still obligated to pay for that and get it done. But let's say, for example, you ask for those credits and then it costs additional and it found out to be a lot more issues, that's going to be something that you're going to have to take on, and the seller's not responsible for that. Another thing to consider when you're asking for credits versus repairs is that you're going to be able to pick which contractor you use. So if you ask for the repairs to be done by the seller, they can technically use any contractor they want. But if you ask for those credits, you can use your own contractor, which is a nice thing to know, and you can verify the work. But if you trust the seller and they get the item done, maybe it's good to just ask for those repairs. Make sure that you don't put your repair request on that residential purchase agreement, because that means that the lender is going to see those, which you don't want. You want to put that on a separate addendum just between you and the seller. So keep that in mind. So those are the 4 things that you're really going to be able to negotiate over: price, terms, the credits, and the repairs. So in conclusion, I think the most important thing that you need to understand is how aggressive are you going to be in your negotiations. So if you're willing to walk away, then you can go ahead and offer any price that you want, within reason, and just see how the seller responds. I tell my buyers, it doesn't cost anything to make an offer. So let's say you find a house that you really love for $600,000, but all you can do is afford, $575,000. Well, go ahead and submit that offer for $575,000. Make sure that all your other terms are as attractive as it can be for the seller, and even consider writing a letter to the seller and say, hey, I really love your home. I'm going to take very good care of it. This is all I can offer right at the moment. I hope that you're not offended. This is all that I can offer. And then see how they respond. So that's something to consider when you say, hey, this is my highest and best. There's no room for negotiation. They may just accept it. Who knows? If you have a really strong likelihood of closing on the property and your funding is in place, that's going to be putting you in a good position. So bear that in mind. It doesn't cost anything to make that initial offer. And if there's more that you want to ask for in escrow, of course you can do that if repairs come up, or if you think the appraisal goes to where it doesn't appraise. It's further negotiations, but don't necessarily count on that. Now, there are chances to do Hail Marys. For example, I worked with a buyer a few years ago, and he was purchasing a house, and right when he was getting to the point of releasing his contingencies on his inspections, he asked for a $30,000, which was about 10% of a price reduction inside escrow. Now, believe it or not, the seller accepted that. And he was willing to walk away, but he was a very aggressive negotiator, and so that does happen. I don't really suggest it because it can really be a tough one. But there are Hail Marys. You have to be willing to walk away in negotiations if you're going to do that. But of course, if they say no and they're in escrow, they can't cancel if they disagree with the amount that you're asking for. It's on the buyer to cancel. So if you ask for a huge reduction in price or something that's pretty large, and the seller just says no way, well, you're still going to be in for that price that you originally agreed upon. They can't say no way, we're canceling. So it's on the buyer, you, to cancel if you do not like the terms. So keep that in mind. Lastly, the most important thing is to get it under contract. Get it under contract. That's very important. Especially if there are other buyers out there, get it under contract and then do the negotiations. Don't try and ask for a lot of negotiations when there are other buyers on the table. Just get it under contract and then decide, hey, where do we need to be for this to really make sense? But you're not in a great negotiation place if there are other buyers, especially if there are strong buyers. So I hope this helped a little bit as far as negotiations and real estate. If you have any questions, you can reach out to me. If you've got some great examples of how you've negotiated great deals as a buyer, please leave those in the comments. I'm going to make a video for sellers, and then we're going to get into a little bit more as investors and what you can do to negotiate under market prices. So stay tuned for that. Hope you all have a great day. Talk to you later.